A federal appeals court struck down Nasdaq's diversity disclosure rules for listed companies. The U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the SEC lacked the authority to approve the rule. The policy required companies to either include women and minority directors on their boards or explain why they had not done so. The rule was introduced in the wake of George Floyd's killing, which spurred companies to address racial inequality and promote DEI. Well, you know something? I would say, Rebecca, that this is something I'm not surprised about. When we talk about what's going on in the world of DEI, it seems to kind of follow the pattern of what we've been seeing. But certainly companies know that when they are diverse, they actually make more money. Studies have shown that, Rebecca.
Well, we know that when you're looking for intelligence, it has to be diverse. If it's all white, you're not going to have the most intelligent people in the world because you are specifically excluding about 90% of the world. When we know the total global population, less than 10%, I believe right now, is actually white. And so knowing that, it doesn't make good sense. It does. If you believe in capitalism, it definitely hurts the bottom line when there's a lack of racial and ethnic diversity. The other thing is we've seen studies in this country showing the potential trillions of dollars in losses because of racism in this country. So regardless of what our federal courts say, especially when it comes to DEI, regardless of what the incoming administration is going to say in DEI, companies have to look out for their bottom line, and their bottom line is about appealing to wide range of audiences and not just less than 10% of the entire global population.
Yeah, but Matt, here's the deal. We know that companies made promises during COVID. They made promises that aligned very closely with DEI. You might have this federal court appeals decision, but it seems like there's also some accountability that would happen, that can still happen when we talk about what was promised during the time that George Floyd was killed and protests were going on.
I think you're exactly right. And if you'll indulge me, I first have to brag. I learned about 10 minutes before we came on that my first ever argument at the Fifth Circuit, I won. So I got my opinion today. We won.
Oh, wow. Hey.
Count. And it was an issue of first impression, which means the law had literally never been argued. And thankfully, we prevailed. So speaking of federal appeals courts, today is one of the milestones in my career.
Congratulations.
There you go.
Part of that. Thank you. But to answer your question and to speak to that, you're 100% right. And look, here's the thing. Before George Floyd, we all saw the black version of McDonald's commercials and the other everybody else version of McDonald's commercials, right? Meaning, to Rebecca's point, they know that a diverse audience turns into more green for them. So this is problematic to not undergird those rules because, to her point, again, I've got to harken back on it. I mean, excellence is diverse. There are a lot of brilliant black people and brilliant non-white people who could serve on these boards. And here's one of the other things that's very important. The entree to these boards is extremely high in terms of what it takes to get on these boards, right? So striking down this rule creates a barrier of entry for people who would otherwise potentially not have access because of racism. And this is one of those things where, I don't know really what's behind the scenes, but unfortunately, we've learned about some judicial misconduct. So I wouldn't be surprised if the right people were whispering in the right judge's ears saying to go the wrong way, right, on this, because this is something that you would think is in conformity with what they said they were going to do with George Floyd. But frankly, that was my concern with a lot of those George Floyd pronouncements around that time and a lot of other people's, which is that it looked like it was purely capitalist greed and it was purely capitalizing on the topic du jour. And then on the back end, not doing what you said you were going to do and hoping that people forgot what you said you were going to do. So, it surprised me that that's the case, but there should be some accountability via us not buying certain products and, patronizing certain companies.
Yeah. And, Michael, this is one of those closed areas where if you were going to get on a board that generally will pay, especially in the six figures for you to be on there, a board where you have to know and network with all the right people. And we think about the limitations of access that African Americans have in the United States, they're not going to be on the board. I mean, you can look at most boards right now. There might be one, but there aren't 2 and 3. That is not how these boards operate. But it seems that this type of decision simply tracks. It tracks for what's going on. in America and in the world right now?
Yeah, this is when we look at Project 2025. One of the aspects of Project 2025, one of the goals is to eradicate diversity, equity, and inclusion, basically at the federal level and federal programs. And this is a continuation of the backlash to the racial reckoning that took place after the death of George Floyd, May 25th, 2020. So we saw various corporations like Walmart make pledges of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, make pledges to make various types of changes, whereas a more diverse workforce, setting up various types of programs, etc. And now we see with Project 2025, we see with Republicans, we see this backlash taking place even during the Biden administration. And now that Trump has won and Republicans took back control of the Senate, we continue to see this backlash. We see with the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, it's a majority conservative circuit. OK, number one. And number two, to your point, when you have these various boards, they don't have this type of rule where these unqualified people can get on these boards, especially if you're African American. OK, so when we look at these attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this is the new affirmative action, and this is the second part of the attack. The first part of the attack was the attack on critical race theory, going back to 2022. Notice they're not talking about critical race theory so much now. The buzzword is diversity, equity, and inclusion. When you look at the dismantled DEI bill that was debated in the House of Representatives in the House Appropriations Committee, I think it was an oversight committee, one of those committees that Jasmine Crockett is on, a couple of weeks ago, you heard all this nonsense that Republicans were talking about attacking DEI and how it's for unqualified people, things of this nature. And you also hear a lack of understanding of history of how we got here as well. So this is one of the reasons why elections have consequences. And your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. Because if you don't understand history and the laws and policies put in place that brought us to where we are, you won't be able to see these threats when they're coming and be able to take the correct action to stop these threats.
Rebecca, here's what I also find most unsettling about this decision. The policy required companies to either include women or minorities or explain why they had not done so. And that is very crucial information in terms of, were they not finding the types of people that they needed to for the board? Or was there something else that was going on? It seems as though this was a rule that not only benefited people in terms of trying to figure out who to bring on the board, but finding out what was the disconnect and not being able to connect with those many, many qualified people that we know are out there.
Yeah, and here's the thing. It's going to disproportionately impact white women. So once again, white women has to take accountability for this, because I bet you there are more white women who got those slots than actual non-white people. Because we know when it comes to affirmative action programs, the number one beneficiary are white women because of the clause of women and or racial minorities. The other thing, going off of both Matt and Michael's points, is that this is also what whiteness is. Whiteness serves as a delusion that there is an inherent intelligence by simply being white. There is an inherent superiority or qualification because of whiteness. And we know that not to be true. And what's unfortunate is that requirement to actually articulate why you don't have racial minorities, why you don't have the inclusion of women, was to get people to actually challenge the thought that white is better than everything else.
Matt, I'll give you the final word on this. I understand that Nasdaq, there's going to be no appeals. This is it. This is acceptable. This is the decision. I guess that makes sense. Again, it's the culture which we are in.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where they're not going to appeal it because it benefits them because they can hook the homies up at this point, right? I mean, so let's just be honest, right? I mean, so it doesn't surprise me that there won't be any appeals. It is yet another slap in the face because, when we went through that period immediately after George Floyd, you know, there were a lot of people who I really highly respect who were like, don't fall for the okie doke. And what happened? Cats fell for the okie doke. And what happened? The okie doke came, right? A la what we're seeing with the rollback of DEI and the all out assault on it. Not just the rollback, not just companies choosing not to honor their promises, but an all out assault and people jumping on board with said all out assault. So it doesn't surprise me that they're not going to appeal. But it also doesn't surprise me because it's corporations, or at least in this instance, connected to corporate greed and corporate, I don't know, the corporate oligarchy, if you call it that. And it doesn't surprise me that they're not going to lower a barrier of entry in terms of having rules that democratize and diversify their boards. So I'm not surprised.
All right. It tracks. It tracks. We'll be back after this break. More with Roland Martin Unfiltered when we come back.
So many of you all have seen this viral clip of Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas talking about how white people are not the victims of oppression. And this took place on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024, in a House of Representatives committee hearing for a markup session for the Dismantle DEI Bill of 2024. Dismantle Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bill of 2024. Now, on Friday, November 22nd, 2024, on Roland Martin Unfiltered, we got a chance to speak with Representative Jasmine Crockett. And I asked her to explain to us exactly the ramifications if that bill becomes law. So first off, I'm going to play a clip of what she had to say in the committee hearing. Okay, let's go to this from her YouTube channel, and give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a heart on this broadcast. How's everybody doing today?
Yep. Okay, Ms. Crockett.
So many of you know that I practice law, but some of you don't realize that I actually was a business major out of Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. And the emphasis that I got in my business degree was on finance. And as I traveled the country campaigning this election cycle, one of the things that I talked about was this idea that in finance, we always promote this idea of diversity. If you know anything about a portfolio, the one thing that you want to do is make sure that it's as diverse as possible, because at times certain stocks will perform better than others, and they will exemplify various strengths and weaknesses. And together, a diverse portfolio is usually what any good finance person would promote. They wouldn't promote that you solely invest in vanilla wafers, believing that that is going to be the strongest portfolio, but instead they may want to add some chocolate cake and some Twinkies into the mix to make sure that we have the best portfolio, because there will be different preferences by different people. And again, there will be different strengths. But as I sit here and I think about what we say and what I'm hearing as it relates to diversity when it comes to anything outside of making money. And to be clear, we are losing GDP every time we try to push back on this idea of diversity, because all of us bring something different to the table. But you consistently said over and over the word oppression, and every time that you said it, it was almost as if I was hearing nails on a chalkboard, because it seems like you don't understand the definition of oppression. And I'd ask you to just refer to Google to help you out. Oppression is the prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or control. That is the definition of oppression. And so as I sit here as a black woman who practiced civil rights, let me tell you, the reason that my colleagues wanted to make sure you understood the same black history that your side of the aisle wants to delete out of classrooms is because you can then misuse words like oppression. There has been no oppression for the white man in this country. You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression. We didn't ask to be here. We're not the same migrants that y'all constantly come up against. We didn't run away from home. We were stolen. So yeah, we are going to sit here and be offended when you want to sit here and act like, and don't let it escape you that it is white men on this side of the aisle telling us, people of color on this side of the aisle, that y'all are the ones being oppressed, that y'all are the ones that are being harmed. That's not the definition of oppression. You tell me the prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment that you've had, and we can have a conversation.
You could start with Exodus.
The final thing that I will say on this particular issue, two things. There is an article from The Guardian, and it is a little old. It's from 2021, so I apologize. But it said that back then, just 3 years ago, white men represent 30% of the population, but 62% of office holders. These are the issues that we are constantly looking at and recognizing and trying to say, is this just? I can't even tell you how many white men have served in this chamber, but I can tell you that I am only the 55th black woman to be elected to Congress. And so when you want to talk about history and pretend as if it was so long ago, it wasn't. Because again, I am just number 55. Finally, when we start to talk about what do these numbers do, as we're trying to say that diversity, equity, and inclusion is the problem, the reality is that when it comes to financial performance, companies with more diverse workforces are more likely to outperform their competitors. Companies in the top quartile for racial diversity are 35% more likely to outperform their peers on profitability. Companies with diverse executive teams are 25% more likely to generate greater profits. Diverse companies earn 2.5 times higher cash flow per employee. Diversity works. And until you can show me data that says otherwise, I think that we need to go back to being a country that listens to experts and gets out of our feelings and recognizes, again, that racism is real in this country. And until we stop pretending that it's not, we will not solve the problems that we are consistently facing. And that will bring real unity that we seek when we're looking for a more perfect union.
Okay, so so that was Representative Jasmine Crockett, and that took place on Wednesday in the it's a markup session in the House of Representatives over this anti-DEI bill. Okay, this anti-DEI bill. So what I'm going to do here is Representative Summer Lee was also on the committee in the same hearing, and Representative Summer Lee had a response as well. Now that was it sounded like Representative James Cromer of Kentucky, who said you can start with Exodus. Okay, I'll talk about that. You know, because I deal with that in my broadcast, dealing with the history of Easter and the origins of Easter, things like that, and we talk about the Exodus and things of this nature, the quote unquote, the mythological story of Exodus. Okay, this may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness, but go watch my whole presentation that I do. It's on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Go watch my whole presentation I do dealing with the origins of Easter. Okay, Easter, Eastra, Oistra. All right, so here's Representative Summer Lee. And I want you to hear what she had to say as well. Let me grab this clip here of Summer Lee also. Okay. And you have, and I've heard a lot of white Republicans, and this was one of the grievances of Donald Trump, who claimed that white people were the victims, the main victims of racism. White people experience more racism than African Americans, things of this nature. Okay. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race that comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, jobs, money, health care, etc., and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is what racism is. When you've benefited from white privilege all your life, equality seems like oppression. So when you have people talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and giving opportunities to other people who have who normally would be overlooked for opportunities that they are qualified for. You have some people who've enjoyed white privilege all their lives who say, oh, that's racism, that's oppression. They want to skip over decades and hundreds of years of racism, white supremacy, and the maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans. They want to skip over all that, okay, and then just say, hey, let's just wave a magic wand and say everything is equal, okay, and racism doesn't exist anymore, and let's have a colorblind society, okay. But they don't want to deal with how wealth, power, and resources has been maldistributed in America.
Going into the next 4 years. I don't believe that all is lost, but I do know as a community, we're going to have to be extremely strategic to come out on the other side, you know, in the most positive way that we could come out.
Right. And can I address that, Candace?
That's right.
When you come back around.
Sure.
Yeah, because when you study Project 2025, and just so everybody knows, I was talking about Project 2025 in 2023, because I found out about it formally September 23rd, 24th, 2024, from Ali Velshi show. Okay. The Schedule F, this change in the Schedule F employees, I found out about that in around July 2022 when Jonathan Swan wrote his article for Axios.com exposing everything. Okay. So I was talking about Project 2025 last year, but what it's actually doing is federalizing a lot of the initiatives that have happened in southern states, especially states controlled by Republicans. Okay, so a lot of these policies have been implemented at the state level in a lot of these former Confederate states that Republicans control, and now they're trying to federalize that with Project 2025. So this is why reading is fundamental. This is why they didn't want slaves to read and write. Okay, because if you learn how to read and write and you learn the law, you could understand how to navigate throughout the system and use the law against the people who are trying to use it against you. So I can't stress this enough. And for all those people who said that Donald Trump knew nothing about Project 2025, he nominated at least 7 people who helped write Project 2025. Over 140 people that served in the first Trump administration contributed to Project 2025. So in the Heritage Foundation, if you go to project2025.org, at the bottom of the website, it tells you it's from the Heritage Foundation.
Sure.
So you learn how to connect the dots, and that he won the governorship. And they also did this back in about 2016 as well in North Carolina. But very quickly, Candace, I want to just give a source. I wanted to reference something when I talked about Project 2025 a few minutes ago. What people have to understand is the actual name of Project 2025 is called Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation, which was founded in 1973 by Paul Wayrick, the Heritage Foundation has been putting out their policy platform called Mandate for Leadership going back to 1981. They've been doing this for over 40 years. And when you research this, the Reagan administration adopted 60% of the 2000 policy recommendations that the Heritage Foundation made in their first Mandate for Leadership. The Reagan administration adopted 60% of those policies in Reagan's first term. Okay, if you go to the Heritage Foundation's website, heritage.org, they have an article there from January 23rd, 2018, 6 years ago, January 23rd, 2018, called "Trump Administration Embraces Heritage Foundation Policy Recommendations." When you read this article, it tells you that in 2017, in Trump's first year in office, the Trump administration adopted 64% of the policy prescriptions that were in Mandate for Leadership from the Heritage Foundation. Now they're telling you, the Heritage Foundation is telling you what they did in 2017.
Correct.
Okay, so anybody who thinks, so this Project 2025 is a continuation of those policy recommendations, is just much worse. So we have to understand this, because if you understand how to put these dots together and understand its history, then you understand the action to take. He knows exactly what Project 2025 is. And he's spoken at the Heritage Foundation's conference in 2017.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, Rebecca, I'm going to close on you. I'm very interested in finding out what you think about Project 2025, in that it has served to be a very very highly recognized marketing tool, if you will, for Donald Trump's agenda, whether he kind of acknowledges it or not. The word is out there. There is a plan that is written. And I'm just wondering about the effectiveness of Project 2025, or do you think it will come and kind of, bite them in the butts later down the line? Or has this proven to do what he and others in the Heritage Foundation wanted to do?
The purpose, in my opinion, of Project 2025 is whiteness in this country learning its quote unquote lesson from the fall of South African apartheid. Anytime you see a shift in demographics and power, which is what we're seeing that there are now less white people being born in this country, more white people who are dying than are actually being birthed in this country. And we all know the actuary tables when it will occur when white people are the racial minority in this country, not just less than 50%, but as they become the actual racial minority in this country. And so what Project 2025 is a way to codify white supremacy and whiteness, this idea, this fictitious idea of whiteness, and to be able to consolidate power as a racial minority. That is what Project 2025 is designed to do. Here's an example. One of the things, I'm sure Michael has talked about it on the show before, one of the things in Project 2025 is to decrease civil service workers in the federal government. The reason why people should care about that is when the civil rights movement and the different civil rights passages, because there was various, within all of the civil rights laws that were passed, there were different tomes within civil rights. One of the big things and one of the biggest game changers for the Black middle class to actually create a sustainable Black middle class in this country was when the federal government stopped discriminating against Blacks going into federal service. That was a game changer because now Black folks were able to get these good paying federal jobs, get good benefits, get good health care, to actually be able to buy a home, be able to send their kids to college, then be able to retire with dignity and actually have money in retirement. So it was stability of the Black middle class and a lot of Black communities in this country. There's a reason why Prince George's County in Maryland is one of the wealthiest Black counties in this country. Is because of the advent of those federal jobs in the DMV area. And so I'm sure Michael could talk about this, and we could spend the rest of the time talking about the different elements. Like when we look at the dismantling of of the Department of Education, that's because there is a rule in this country that if you are going to have public education in this country, then it needs to be accessible to all. The earliest court cases on public education in this country was the former enslaved of saying, hey, we demand to get educated in this country. We demand that our kids are able to get educated, get sent to schools, and actually not just have the shoddiest and the worst the worst books and textbooks and have underfunded classrooms, actually have heat inside classrooms where little kids are going to school. All of these things were to help. All of these things were to benefit those who are descendants of the former enslaved in this country. So the whole point of Project 25 is to remove all of those federal protections. And we've seen it happen on the state level. It's the reason why you go to Alabama, where you can see that those who are convicted felons in prison, they are shopped out to fast food chains to serve in the drive-through, getting pennies a day, that free labor. It's the reason why those things are happening in certain states. It's the reason why in Mississippi State Legislature this past legislative session tried to shut down several public schools across the state, including several HBCUs, because they want to shut down access to education in that state. Because in the state of Mississippi, having access to quality education is the difference between poverty and not being in poverty in that state. And so when we look at the specific things that are being targeted, it is specifically to be targeted to keep a Black underclass in this country and to have a permanent white power class in this country. And that's something people have to really understand.
Yeah, those dots are readily available for you to connect. Michael, I'm going to leave you for 30 seconds for the last word before we go to this break.
Well, Rebecca is talking about the Schedule F employees, okay? And that is part of Project 2025 to fire up to 50,000 federal employees and reclassify them and fill them with loyalists, Trump loyalists, from a database that they've created of Trump loyalists. Now, Donald Trump signed an executive order in 2020 when he was in office to reclassify those federal employees as Schedule F. He didn't act upon it. They didn't have the database then. Joe Biden in 2021 rescinded that executive order. People don't understand this stuff was brewing in 2020. Right.
It was.
Okay. 18% of the federal workforce are Black people. So when you start talking about firing tens of thousands of federal employees, who the hell you think they're coming for? We don't understand that we don't understand.
And what Trump learned and his people learned during that time is that their plan of action was not put into place. And that is what Project 2025 is. Yes. That is, we're talking about an explanation of them looking at people and looking at qualifications, determining who was a loyalist, determining things about the transgender community. As you said, these things that affect African Americans on a whole. He is now ready to rumble a little bit better, I'm afraid to say, with Project 2025, as much as he's denying that he's not associated with it. It's on paper. I mean, 2025.
922 pages.
That's right. There is indeed a plan. We're going to have a really close look at this as soon as January 20th comes around. All right. All eyes on that time. Got to take a deep breath off of that one. Let's take a break. Stay with us. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered here live on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
All right, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can support the African History Network. $, the AHN show through Cash App and through PayPal as well, paypal.me/the AHN show. So we have our Cash App link here right on the homepage of our website, as well as PayPal. So that helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, etc. Pay some of the bills. Register for the fantastic online history course I teach on Saturdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch this anytime. And even after the course is over with, you'll still have access to watch the class. Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It's a 12-week online history course. It just started up. Click right here to register. And you can do debit card or credit card or pay through PayPal. We have our class lesson plan right here as well. There are over 200 slides that we look at in the class, 80 to 100 articles. 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of the books. I'll show you excerpts of the book right on the screen. The video clips that we look at, etc. Interviews I've done with many of our scholars like Professor James Small, Professor Kaba Kamene, Anthony Browder, Runoko Rashidi, and more. Click right here to download the lesson plan, and you can. We have a overview of the class right here as well. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, let's see here. So hopefully you all learned a lot today. Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.